So I just sent out a reminder or an announcement that I did just now change the assignment due dates for this last week and then all the weeks moving forward. So if you see a Sunday night due date, it's not right. So everything should be due on Monday nights. So don't look at that and think you okay, like I know that technically some of them would have been due yesterday, but that's not right. That's what it said on the sheet, but I changed those. So um anyway, tonight we'll talk about investments and then we're going to dive into retirement planning. So it can be a situation where we kind of over try to find that we try to find that nice mix between making something show the complexity of the truth of the situation that they're in, and then also show the also though in a way try to simplify it through recommendation. So we're putting it through our filter to try to make something that might be a little more complex, right? Like the investment side of things and retirement planning is a complex piece to what we do, but simplify it to the point where we can present it to clients and make it understandable. So try to do our best to look at those ways, right? Because in the end, it doesn't matter if you are you got all the acronyms listed behind you and you're the smartest person in the room and everyone knows it. If you can't communicate with people, at eye level, it's going to be really hard. As a matter of fact, I experience it all the time doing financial planning. I probably have I can think of 100 times when I've probably overcomplicated something with clients where they need a simpler recommendation. I can't think of maybe one or two times when I've made it simpler than it should be, and the client needed that extra layer of complexity for whatever reason. So that's going to be a big part of our discussion because especially on the investment side, there's a lot of terminology, there's a lot of assumptions that we use, right? Our vernacular is very different. So hi Jason. So that being said, I do want to start with questions that you guys had over the investment section. Is there anything that stood out to you that you want to make sure we go over?
I think I mentioned it to you yesterday that the Bitcoin variance standard deviation was a little confusing. And then even when I Googled it, it said that it somehow is only 16 or something percent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
right.
I think I just put in mind like technically that may be true, but it's underlying that is not true at all. And as quickly as it grew, it could go away really quick.
Yeah. The biggest piece of their portfolio is this Bitcoin holding. And so it actually is an integral component to trying to make sure they understand how it fits. But we got to be really careful because I think Jason maybe it was in a previous video that I'd watched, but someone was talking to me about it. It's like if you really do use those assumptions, that Bitcoin holding is going to it continues to look better over time. Is that really accurate? So, so yeah. Sergio texted me as like right as someone had sent me an article about Donald Trump talking at the Bitcoin conference, and so I was like reading over that, and then boom, I get this notification from you, which was a really good question, right? Like, what are the assumptions we really should use moving forward? So, I would love to say I have the answer. I don't think any financial planner has an answer out there to it. Man, even today, like if you're kind of looking at it, I think it had some pretty volatile swings, down 5%, up 5%, very common. I have a notification on Robinhood every time it goes up or down 5%. And so it's like, oh man, it's really interesting to see that. But anyway, all that being said, what's the answer? So Sergio, like I told you, and this is honestly what I tell clients. I say we need to ask ourselves if we can make any assumptions on it. And it's kind of a cop out answer, right? But should we really imply anything moving forward in terms of a rate of return and in terms of a standard deviation or expected expectation that it's going to be there, or is it going to grow steadily or slowly? So that's not going to help us much in this assignment, though, right? Because we probably should put at least some type of number to it. But in the real world, it is a thing, and so something that we probably should, at least grapple with. And so, I think we need to use the assumptions that are given, right? And then what we should probably also do is, um, be pretty diligent in adding the disclaimer on that no one really knows exactly what those holdings are going to do in the future. And there are examples of even crypto. Bitcoin has bounced back. It is, in terms of all the coins out there, relatively stable, right? Um, but that's only relative to those other options out there. So we've been working pretty diligently with the client who had a large holding in Cardano, I think, ADO maybe. But anyway, that has not rebounded as much, right? At one point, it was selling at $3 a coin, and now it's at down to, I don't know, $1.75, something like that. It's never bounced back. And so he's had that experience of literally having $20 million in a holding and seeing it dwindle down to less than a million and then bounce back to 3 million. Um, and so like we had really pulled on him at its peak right before the crypto winter to be like, let's get out. And we were able to get 1 million out, and invested in a normal type of portfolio strategy. And that was it. After that, it started falling, and he's still like wholehearted believer that it will be, at some point, those holdings are going to be worth 60 million, 600 million, and so when we're showing clients the power of compounding, even showing something at 16% is kind of a risk. Because like, right, Sergio isn't the assumption that we're going to be seeing a 16% return on those crypto holdings, or is the standard deviation at 16%?
I think the standard deviation was 16, the return was 7%.
Okay. All right. Well, that's better. Yeah. So, yeah, we just go with those assumptions for now, or you know, because ultimately the recommendation should probably be that we need to help slowly pull funds out of that account and holding. And so we got to create a plan that's going to help them understand that um they have had a windfall, and that windfall is still somewhat at risk of pretty significant downturn. And so you got to speak reason to them and help them understand that even with normal compounding, even if they're able to just invest like a normal person would, even though they don't have normal assets, right? They're going to see significant, they're going to have generational wealth there if they want it. Um, and so to show like a client that is pretty big, because if you remember there, of course, that you can tell they don't necessarily have the financial education that we would want. Their expectations are like 40% return. Like that's not realistic. Like, you shouldn't expect that anywhere. A hedge fund, stock market portfolio, crypto portfolio. That's actually kind of a dangerous assumption. And so it's like a big red flag. So you need to bring them down to earth and show them, hey, listen, if we're growing a portfolio at maybe 8 or 9%, widely diversified, mostly exposed in the market, look at what this can grow to over time. And so that's probably the first thing they just need to see illustrated for them. But I appreciate you bringing that to the forefront, Sergio, because that's a big question. Any other questions that stood out for me, guys, about the investments?
Okay, so you wanted us to use the given rate of return for crypto, or is that accurate, or were we supposed to edit that, or I wasn't? Yeah, I had kind of edited it, but
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, it's So I've kind of went off the rails to say, listen, when I'm talking with clients, I don't use an expected rate of return for crypto. Like I'm just not going to show it growing, especially, at what people want to see crypto growing at, whatever that would be, 20 or 30% or 40% return or something. So when we're running our numbers, it can help if we go ahead and use the assumptions that we have there. But I'm not going to be requiring that, Jason. That's not going to be a big deal if you don't have a if you don't have that, or have chosen to take it out or omit it, or make an edit to it. In the end, you can choose your assumptions, right? Like we try to help you along, but you can choose them. And so whatever you choose, as long as you've done the math to show the client that, that's going to be great. So yeah. And again, it really does come back to data. Like, how are we showing what is the data, um, the tables, the compiling? How are we putting it all together? There's a lot of research out nowadays that it's not about. Some of the most powerful things we can do is show people the right thing at the right time, what they need to hear to help kind of prod them in a good direction, a healthy direction. And so, there's some charts in the retirement planning module that show us that, but also like as you prepare, um, their portfolio analysis, we have things that can help us along, like Sharp ratios, you know what I mean? But clients are probably not going to weed through that. That's going to be something more that we use, even the measures of risk and beta and things like that. They're not going to be too much concerned with that. I'll be honest, clients aren't usually even concerned with some of the more simpler things, rates of return. They don't necessarily care that much to see that. They'd rather see um, the growth in real dollars. Like that's just because to them, that, like, what's the difference between 5 and 15%? A, a, there's a lot of people that are like, that doesn't sound like much of a difference. Well, it's pretty big. Compounding makes it pretty big, and even in just a few years. So, the data compiling, how are you putting it together? You underwhelming them, overwhelming them. That's the kind of stuff that is we're kind of looking at. So, any other questions? What are the recommendations? Any good recommendations that you made? I'll brag on Jason's portfolio. I was just looking over a few of them today before we were getting started, and he had some good, the investment model. Hey, let's show you what that would look like, and then just kind of how you described it is, I think, pretty helpful for the client, that we're going to have a portfolio that's a model portfolio moving forward, and so that's kind of the goal. And just like in everything in life, it's like when you meet with someone on a weight loss journey, right? Like you see what your goal is in mind. There's a finish line in so many ways, but then there's also the steps that you're gonna have to go about to getting there. And that's really what the DOS household is going to have to do, right? There's going to be a lot of steps getting them from point A to point B. So, one thing I didn't see too much of yet, but I like, is guardrails and just bringing those up. Like, Jason, you talked about putting them in maybe more international, more small and mid cap, just because those have a lower price to earnings ratio right now. And I think that's a good idea. And so what we do though in our investment models, we give out guardrails. And so those guardrails kind of help out, hey, listen, we're probably going to be maybe anywhere from 8% international to 15% given whatever market. And so there we have a little bit more of a range to operate in. And of course we get to choose our, it's up to our discretion to make the fit. If it's going to be more on the 8 or more on the 15% side. Um, so yeah, what are some other recommendations you guys made? let's kind of get into specifics. Did you make any recommendations for him to move his 401k at Starbucks?
So I may have done it wrong, but I didn't include the retirement assets into this one, thinking that it would fit into the next assignment.
Okay. I guess it'll be one of those things where there's going to be a lot of overlap anyway. So, I'm not gonna rail you over the coals for that because you'll probably encounter it in this next lesson. So the planner that brought this case, um, brought this case, I think the Dr. Annette I think he'd originally said that he was intending on seeing those 401k assets moved, like go ahead and just take the penalty and move them out. Like out of a retirement plan because they're in a lower tax category right now. I mean, my recommendation would be you probably roll them into an IRA, and then if you're really concerned about that, you could do a convert to Roth, not pay the penalty and tax, but pay the just normal tax, and then of course sell the Starbucks along the way, and then go into a diversified portfolio. So because that's really the goal. You'd want them more in Roth, and they're kind of light in retirement accounts, period. They've got a lot of other things going on. So um but yeah, there's kind of a lot that you could get, a lot of directions you could go. There's probably, oh gosh, as I was reading through some of those, I'm thinking there's probably somewhere around 40 or 50 recommendations you could make. So to make 5 or 8 good ones is probably the best option, instead of overwhelming people with them. So, um, but yeah, you take that crypto asset, and it's one of those things where it's like, you'd have to do this. This would be an active part of your job, but you would be needing to probably watch it and then slowly move it over once you hit certain thresholds. See it up 5%. Let's sell a little bit more, and yeah, you're going to get hit a little on those capital gains, but you've got to get it out, just because you've got to. I mean, once you finally get to this maybe legacy stake where they're still fascinated and enthralled and seeing it still be a part of their plan, that's fine, but maybe only make it 10 or 20% of their portfolio at large. And yeah. Any other good investment recommendations? Well, if you guys are good with it, we'll go ahead and keep on moving. It's going to all kind of flow into retirement planning anyway. So, talk a little bit on kind of where we're at. I've made an update to due dates, so that's there. We have um, a retirement tool, retirement models that we want to make sure we use, and so I'm going to show you that, because if you're not starting there, you could probably put in a lot more work than needs be. So if you go into our model here, you won't be seeing this one, it's hidden. Go into Monday, August 5th. You'll see at the bottom here, use the retirement models you developed in the retirement planning course to assist you in your analysis. So these are just helpful spreadsheets, for us to determine kind of where we're going, as we create a good retirement plan for a client. And so we've got our assumptions here, the current age, the retirement age, expected last year of life, working life expectancy, retirement life expectancy, wage replacement at 80%. And so, it does all the work for us. And then all we would have to do then is make recommendations for the retirement planning. So I've heard some thoughts on this because I've met with young people as well. Not ones quite like this, but ones who are have this idea that at some point they want to be able to hit cruise control and like, hey, even long before they actually are retired, check off the list. I'm done with my retirement planning. So as I was doing some reviewing and going over some of the other courses that had taken this class, some students had made the recommendation to hey, maybe you could go into an annuity, some type of a product out there, right? An insurance product that might be able to provide protection for them while also, creating an income at some point way down the road. And that's actually probably not the best thing for this couple, right? Because they're young and they can't assume that they can take risk. They probably should do that without having to get into a product like an annuity, right? That's going to give up the potential upside with heavy fees, just consistently pulling it down. Furthermore, if you really think about it, what they need to do more than anything else is have a plan going forward where they're actually going to be able to use retirement, vehicles, those vehicles that are out there, whether it be an IRA, Roth, or workplace retirement plan, that'll help them get them to their goal. So anyway, yeah, you've got the annuity model here so that's why I guess I thought, annuity, of course, we're just using it in terms of the time value tool here. But I thought that was pretty nifty the way it kind of worked out. So you can see, again, this is the life cycle hypothesis at work, right? We've got really a calculus that we need to do in order to figure out if a retirement goal is going to be in line. We need to figure out the accumulation expectancy, right? How much are they really going to be adding in payment? And then we need to figure out how much they're going to need in retirement, right? As we hit the savings turns to dis savings. And so, then we need to, of course, figure out if we're looking at, trying to hold the capital preservation or if we're trying to go ahead and spin that down. So, so they swallow their last nickel the day they die, which some people want to, at least they think they want to do. So yeah, these are the simple steps to kind of help follow that process. How much do we need to save? What's the retirement goal? Like, what's that bag of money you need when you hit retirement age? And then, so that's kind of like step B, right? And then we got step A to B, right? How much do we need to move forward from now till then to save? And then, B to C being that this savings down the roller coaster, spinning it down, and so this is I think a helpful tool for us. And this shows us the capital preservation model as well. And so you can see the annuity model, the capital preservation model here. So all this should be hopefully pretty familiar to you. Okay. I love net present value calculations as well. I think those are sometimes more, they're just more accurate, right? You're trying to figure up on a year by year basis the value of something with uneven cash flows, which is the real world that we live in. And so this is showing us, of course, how much money would have to go out if they were to start at age 50. This calculation. So, and then this last one would just be, hey, what return do I need to make if I know I'm already saving this much and my goal is, to save $1 million by the time I'm 67, then what's the return that I would have to go out? Well, what kind of investment should I put myself in to get the return? Because I already know I'm saving this much money. So yeah, all those are there for us. And so that's hopefully something that'll allow you to feel confident as you go through this process a little bit more, because it's not like you have to create all of this from scratch. These are tools that you guys have already created to kind of have in your tool chest. All right, so if you're good with it, we'll go ahead and dive into the slides. Are there any questions as I'm pulling up the slides that you guys things you wanted to ask?
I saw that we have to do like a social security estimate, and it felt kind of difficult for that to be really based on much, I guess,
Sure.
given where they are.
Yeah, so um we typically say that Social Security is growing pretty much in step with inflation, usually a tick lower. But you could probably go ahead and use the risk, let it grow at the risk-free rate. Um, the assumption of the 2 to 3% would probably be okay. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty mind-boggling just to see those numbers, isn't it? You mean these people have 40 years left, and that's a long runway, but 40 years inflated is pretty mind-numbing. But they need to see that. They also need to see how much the income expectancy is a big piece of that too, right? Because so often what we focus on is accounts and accounts values. But really, I'd say half of the equation in retirement planning is trying to figure out just what someone's consumption expectancy is. And so that's oftentimes the most frustrating thing too, right? Because they don't have a budget. Um, Very few people do. And so they come to you with this idea of a goal of retirement. And you really have a difficult time dialing in just exactly what they would need in terms of, asset value. If they're asked, because here's the deal, like a lot of times people come to you, especially if you do a lot of retirement planning. So that's kind of like, I would say like 7 out of 10 people that come to me are usually at this point where they're pretty close to retirement, and they want to try to see, well, what is it going to look like? And they know, honestly, most of them know very little. So it's their questions are more like, so how am I going to use my 401k money in retirement? And so you really have to dial back this like expectation that you're going to be able to speak you know uh very it's going to drop very heavily on them if you start throwing out all this different terminology of rates of return and things like that. They just want to try to simply see what do I have. I got my Social Security, maybe I have some pension income. What's it going to look like if I start pulling out a little bit of money out of my 401k? How could how would you manage that differently than me? And a lot of them are in target date funds because that's the thing that they set up. They opt out, opt in. Target date funds are kind of the go-to. So anyway, all that being said, that's usually kind of their thought is like, hey, how much do I need? And it's like, well, how much do you spend? And so uh it's kind of an interesting thought, and really retirement philosophically too, has kind of, you know, the thought of retiring to Florida or to, what is it, Sunny Village, Arizona, and living this like country club life where you're just kind of playing games and hanging out with a bunch of older people your age. That has rightly been, I think, challenged in a lot of different ways. So I'd read a book. Jeff Hanen wrote a good book. He's a guy out of Denver, but he wrote a book, Uncommon Retirement, and it is, helps us understand this is kind of what we need in terms of retirement attitudes. What are we seeing from people? Are they really expecting to just kind of ride into the sunset, enjoy their life? Or are they looking to like become more rooted in their communities, donate their time more, be more active, be more purposeful? The old, not just retiring from something, but you're retiring to something. And so what we, this kind of gets into what we're going to be doing in the calculus of the retirement needs planning. But a lot of times retirement attitude planning, retirement expectancy is a big deal. And so I just got an email a little while ago, because I hadn't checked my emails yet today, of a client who's pretty old that I'd started working with, maybe in their late 60s, close to 70. And all it took was a phone call from his boss. He's back at it now at his at his workplace. And I go, oh man, that's really kind of hard, because we had showed him that was not going to be necessary. And he had talked about 1,000 different reasons why he didn't like work, but There are many people that are struggle as they begin retirement. They find a lot of purpose from work. Maybe they work all the time. And so to see that aspect of their life leave becomes like this big hole and void. And it's like, wow, it's really sad. Because we'd like to think that when people retire from work, they were going to be able to dive into the things that are going to be most fulfilling to them, most purposeful, most kingdom driven, and all those things. So anyway, that being said, that retirement attitude is something we always try to encounter with clients. Like we want to be able to have a time, and we call it our discovery portion of a meeting, or a discovery meeting, where we sit down and try to see, not only is your goal retirement, okay, that's fine. A lot of people say that, right? But like, why is that your goal? What is going to change? Do you understand that? Have you encountered that, amongst other people or your friends or a spouse? What do you expect it to look like? And so, and honestly, retirement is not a smooth system, right? Like retirement early on usually involves a little bit more going and doing and seeing. A lot of times people do go through 3 phases in retirement. They have the go-go years. It's really busy. It's crazy. They're fast at several things. The go-go retirement could be used to take care of grandkids. I see a lot of taking care of your elderly parents in the go-go retirement years. People need to retire so that they can focus on being, taking care of their parents as they're elderly. And so, that's a truth. Like people, you think that you maybe a parent would die when you're still in your working years, maybe in your 40s or 50s, but a lot of people's parents are dying at kind of that same time period as you're also retiring. And so a lot of times that'll push people into retirement. And again, that's a life change thing too, right? People come to financial planners when they see a life change imminent in one, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. Could be a new job with extra margin in your life, could be a divorce, could be, you're realizing that you just need to dedicate more time to your family because you've got grandkids you're taking care of and your parents that you're taking care of. And so those are all aspects of retirement aspiration. Of course, also just the go-go retirement involves like taking care of the honey-do lists that you never got to when you were a worker, visiting places that you would want to see, and some other like rewarding, fulfilling things, even volunteering that you would want to do. At some point, though, like something knocks you off the horse and go-go turns to slow-go. And so that the slow-go years are usually marked by like, it's a little harder to move, to do things. You still can, but it's more efforted, and you just would rather not do as many things. And then at some point, for some people, that turns into the no-go, and that would be like significant health issues. Maybe you're in long-term care. But like it's helpful to be able to talk through that with clients because it does flow into consumption expectancy. And you do have people that come in and their expectation is that they want to spend down their retirement fast. And sometimes people come in and their expectation is, I grew my retirement so that I won't touch it. And if I see my account values going down, that's going to be very hard, and it's like, whoa. Like we had a purpose for those funds, and now you're kind of changing it. It's now a legacy play for you, or is this all actually dollars you intended to use for retirement? So anyway, all that being said, I'm sorry, the AC kicked on in this place. It's so loud. Let's kind of dive more into this calculation, right? As you'd seen in the sheet we had talked a little bit about, you do need to figure out their income funding goal. And all clients have a cliff. I was going to show you our planning software because hopefully it's going to help you see a few things. It's going to help you see that sometimes simpler is better. And there's a lot of new softwares out there now that emphasize a simple, clean kind of model for clients. And so this is called Right Capital. I've showed it to you once before, I think. But I've built out just a simple little plan for these people because the retirement piece is like, you want to be able to show clients more than just a Monte Carlo analysis. I think that's helpful because as you make changes, you can see the strength of plans diminish or strengthen, but it's not the end all and be all. And if you're tracking with people, there are so many people out there who, as you build plans, they want to see this excellent plan. I was always an A student. I want to be 100% in a Monte Carlo analysis, and that's just not realistic. So there are things though in a plan, as you can see, this is a fictional client. I went ahead and put in all their information. Very simple, maybe have about 800,000 in retirement savings. They want to retire at 65. They're in their mid 50s. They've done a good job of saving because as you can see, if you went into like this flow chart, they're saving just a little bit now, right? It's actually showing that they don't know what to even do with this extra money, so it's spending it. But they've done a good enough job at this point where they're going to be okay to walk away into retirement. And so they've got this much money coming in until they hit retirement age. And at that point, they're going to be expecting to pull this much funds basically out of their 401k or their retirement plan to be able to use for life. And so these charts are useful. Sometimes it's helpful to look behind the scenes and see numbers with clients so that they can get this realization, right? Jason, you talk about Social Security, right? This one actually models out the estimates that, hey, because Benny's living to 90 or making 90,000 and his wife's making 45. So this is kind of the expectation if they were to start at full retirement age, how much they could make from Social Security. But a lot of times people are very confused as to just what piece of their pie 401k versus the IRAs versus the pensions or Social Security are going to make up. And so I always show this to clients because it's a simple way to see this is what you have coming in from Social Security. All right. And this is what you're going to be really needing to make ends meet. And so even this client, nothing special, not very complex, but 60 to 70% of their income need is going to be coming from Social Security, right? Only 30% of the plan is dictated by 401k assets. Matter of fact, once they get the RMD age at 75, we see a big jump in that. It's showing them just spending that money because the plan doesn't know what to do. Right. So like, again, it's simple. It's pretty clean. We like it for those reasons because we've tried using the more complex planning softwares. By the time you get to that 13th page of PDF printout, they can get lost. And so, yeah, we really like using the simpler tools. And there's a few more out there as well. Some of them have even challenged like that Monte Carlo analysis number. Because it can be overused. What's the probability of success in the plan, based on all the market conditions? And it has been a little bit, it's kind of burnt toast now. I think a lot of planners are seeing that as well, where you can overdo those Monte Carlo analysis. But that's not going to be anything necessarily you have to worry about, right? What your job is to help them find that good path to retirement, figuring out what they need to bring in and whatnot. Oh, one piece I was going to show you though is how easy it is to kill a plan based on spending. So every plan has a cliff. And so right now we're showing $6,000 a month inflated at 3% over the course of their retirement. And so if you just, bump that to 7,000, you can see the Monte Carlo goes down, end of life funds that they were planning to give away start to go down. And so again, it's helpful, I think, a lot of times to help people find that cliff because some people say, I'd rather spend $2,000 extra a month. I don't have much in terms of needing to give away to my kids an inheritance. A 70% plan is still showing I'm going to have money left over at the end, most likely. And at some point, though, you do hit that cliff where it's for them, it's going to be around $9,000 and $10,000. You just can't do it, right? And so you could try, but the plan's going to show with inflation adjustments, especially that you're going to be spending more than what you bring in retirement, and you've killed your plan. So kind of interesting to see that. Hopefully that gives a little bit of help to you guys as you start doing stuff. Obviously, you're creating your own graphs and making plans from scratch in many ways, but helping them see that there's going to be a retirement number goal. Retirement planning is something that when you're young, you should be thinking, I need to sock away 10 to 15% of my income every year to build that, you know, castle, so to speak, to build my retirement plan. And that kind of circles back to as well, right? Like when someone had asked, should so this people just buy an annuity, some product that's going to pay them out in retirement and not ever even worry about retirement planning? That becomes a scary proposition because I think that you probably need to be building that the slow, hard way. And quick, fast money tends to leave quick and fast, right? So you don't want quickly earned money in retirement planning. A lot of times you want someone who's said, listen, I understand what this represents to me. This represents, 30, 40, 45 years of paying myself first, taking it out before I even saw it, putting it into retirement where I could let it grow and multiply and compound. So yeah, there's the three different ways to figure out the gross need of a client's life expectancy: capital depletion, preservation, or inflation adjusted. So I'll be honest that our work, we use inflation adjusted numbers. And so that's because it's the most conservative option. We'd never want to show someone a plan that looks good but isn't, right? Like we'll err on the side of making something look somewhat bad, even if it might work. You might be able to float it, but having it that other way around is really hard, because you're putting them at risk and their situation. So it's kind of like telling someone they can withdraw 8% out of their retirement funds in retirement. Like that becomes a scary place after you go down that road, because you might be telling people they're able to do something they're not able to do. So there's some flowcharts in this, that I think are helpful. And so here's one that talks about basically, does the capital depletion retirement analysis indicate need for additional savings? And so if you're still needing more money, right, then there's got these other steps that you can go through to reach. And so you can kind of read through that as well. I really like the other one down here, we'll get to in a second. So yeah, this shows you the safe withdrawal rate. The 4% plan typically is saying, listen, in about every market environment other than this one, you're able to withdraw 4% of your retirement and be able to see it last through your life expectancy. You can also see where that 8% number is. So anyway. Kitces has an article, right, on the 4% rule. A lot of his stuff out there too. Matter of fact, I had a classmate at Kansas State that does a lot of blog writing for Kitces on the Monte Carlo analysis tool. And so in many ways, our biggest job, even in retirement, becomes to continually measure and monitor a client's situation to let them know if they're in a healthy state or not. And so, it's nice to be able to say, I give you my blessing, you can retire. But that's, yeah, because some of them want to hear that. A lot of times I tell them it's not our job to give you our blessing, right? Like you're the one that has to make that decision. But nevertheless, measuring and monitoring a portfolio is a big deal, because you think people when you first build a plan for them. When you capture their income, you capture how much they're saving, and you can really, go through the back door to figure out how much they're spending. But sometimes you don't know. Sometimes they've received a windfall and they've spent through it, and their expectation is to spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 more in a month than you thought, right? And so that consumption expectancy is high, and they start making withdrawals, and you go, whoa, I thought we were going to look at something very different. I thought they were only going to be withdrawing $3,000 a month out of their 401 or their retirement plan, or IRA, and now they're doing that, but then they're also taking some big chunks out at times to pay for needs that they weren't able to save for with any extra from that other piece. So, yeah, it is something that, just like retirement building will be, and the DOS household has an extreme amount of need for long horizon financial planning. Like, hey, there's some things that we're only going to be able to do in the smallest of chunks, but we have to start now and we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to basically tether ourselves to each other for our lifetimes because, if they're willing to work with a planner and be like, man, that's what you have to do. You've got to slowly save into the Roth, slowly play the capital gains efficiency, moving funds out of things, taking the tax loss harvest on GameStop at $3,000 a chunk on a year, until finally you're able to, get things where they need in the right vehicle for the right goal in their plan, right? And then once you get retired, it's not any different. Then at the same time, you still are in need of measuring and monitoring to make sure that you're kind of puttering along at the right pace. And and sometimes it's not, of course, I say this because it's so true. It's not always the spender that you have to worry about. Savers really need encouragement as they move into retirement because they can't take this idea that all of a sudden they're going to start spending down the money that they had worked really hard, right? Like these people are money vigilant. And so they get to that point and they're like, look what I've done, look at this thing I've created. I don't want to see it go away. I don't want to see it go down. It's very similar to the person that has maybe a larger bank savings, like, hey, I've saved $20,000 in my bank account. I know that's my emergency fund, but I also need to purchase a vehicle, and then they go out and finance the vehicle for $8,000 because they don't want to see their cash savings go down. They worked hard for that. It's kind of like that in retirement planning, but sometimes people they don't think logically about how much they have, what state they're in, and they need a planner who's going to be able to move them along and say, it is okay. You can do it. You can swim. You can spend out of this retirement plan that you have saved. That is good. That is healthy. That's what it's there for. More is not always the answer, especially in retirement accounts. And so that's a great segue, right, into required minimum distribution. So required minimum distribution's actually been pushed out to age 75. So you can see clients now moving forward between age 73 and 75 who are required to take money out. There are a lot of people out there who have only ever saved into the 401ks pre-tax. A lot of people are like, what's that new thing called the Roth? You're like, Roths have been around for almost 30 years. I'm sorry you haven't you used them. Maybe you didn't have an option in the 401k up until recently. Everyone should have had an option starting in 24 for the Roth side. But anyway, all that being said, that requirement distributions can be a huge deal, right? Because your retirement account just bludgeons itself. It grows. It's just getting like there's too much in the pre-tax category. And then they get really hit hard with taxes at retirement. And so what we often tell people is you do usually go through a phase when you're not in that higher tax category. There's usually kind of a trough in planning from when you retire and then when you have to start taking out RMDs. And so here you can see this, right? Like they're effectively paying zero in federal tax because all they have coming in is Social Security and a very little amount of 401k. So at that point you say, listen, since you're not paying much in tax, maybe go ahead and do a Roth conversion up to 12%. And see how that would affect the plan, and go ahead and pay the taxes now to get money over into those accounts. So that's been, that's again, though, that's a year by year thing. Some people are willing to do 40, 50, $100,000 in Roth conversions, but most people don't really want to pay that much in taxes. I start with maybe a $10,000 conversion as they feel more comfortable with that and start to get the math behind it with us, then they're able to increase it. So any questions up to that point? Obviously, this optimal retirement plans is kind of looking at the IRAs, the employer plans. And so here it talks about I like this flow chart, and I've used this one in other places, right? Does the employer match? If so, contribute up to the point of matching, then maximize the Roth, and then continue to fund the qualified plan. Sometimes I argue, you could also argue taxable savings for people who don't have them can be a huge help even before you add more into the retirement plan. But it all is dependent upon your person and who you're working with, right? Because planning is people specific and people first. So there are some people out there who are just not going to be able to save outside of the workplace plan. They're going to spend every dollar that hits their bank accounts, right? And so they have a difficult time with this, like able to save into the Roth, starting something new. I think it's healthy to do it and even challenge them that way. There's some people that aren't going to be able to do that. And for them, the workplace plan might be the only place they see growth. The only thing that sticks, is to see the money come out before it even hits their paycheck. And so that's a real piece to it. So, but yeah, now, I mean, there's a lot of people in this no category, right? They're not eligible to go ahead. They don't have a workplace plan. So now what? And so here he gives you some options. So yeah, you also have a decision to make when you hit retirement, or as you begin to look at that, if you would rather take the annuitization option, right? So some 401k plans out there are going to give you the choice that you can take, your normal amount that you paid into it, or you could take a 5 or 6%, annuitization on that. Sometimes lump sum options are out there, right? Like where they're almost kind of saying you have an annuitization option through a pension, but if you wanted to, we don't have to give you that amount. We could just throw it in your bank account, and call it good. And so annuitization can be good for some people. Again, if you have someone that's a high spender, if you have someone who knows if they've got honey in the pot, they're going to put their hand in that pot and pull the honey out. Sometimes it provides a level of security that they need, that they're not going to be able to touch those funds. But especially if you're going to go out and buy an annuity product, right? The 3-4% fee that can be attached to those can really pull down a plan. And furthermore, sometimes it's hard to find annuities out there that are concerned about growth and concerned about having good investments. And so then they're not growing like they should. And there's a whole laundry list of other challenges. Also, sometimes people go out and buy annuities and really they don't have much in a retirement plan. And so like they didn't have much in a 401k to begin with. And those people, a lot of times, those annuities aren't really able to stretch, meet their needs. There might not be some, a catalyst for growth in them if they bought them well before they actually retired. And so like inflation might eat up their plan to the point where in their late 70s and 80s, they don't have much to be able to live on, right? So it just depends. I have seen annuities used effectively with people sometimes who had when you die, but your spouse is a big spender. Like, hey, I should probably find a way to create a monthly stream of income for my spouse instead of expecting them to be able to manage this pot of money that is available. But really, as planners too, right? Like you become the and you annuit you're when someone asks you to create a retirement income plan with a pile of money, in many ways, you're doing the job of an annuity, only it's way more flexible because you're not tying someone in to an expected rate of return over a given amount of time. So that's usually what we tell people. Like, listen, especially when they want guarantees. Like I don't want to, I'd rather just have a guaranteed, payout of 5% until the day I die. And we're always quick to tell them, like, well, listen, this part becomes a part of the trust conversation with us. You will probably be better off in the long run if you just keep your retirement assets exposed in a stock bond mix, and you allow us to make the decisions on that allocation and the flow of those money to you. We make sure we're sending it to you just like an annuity would. It works really well. So you do have fixed income annuities, variable annuities. Man, FIAs are hard because like a lot of people that bought them a few years ago, they're paying out 2%, and like you can go out and get a money market account at 4 or 5%. So a fixed indexed annuity also plays by so many complex rules. And I really think that's probably maybe even my biggest argument against sometimes these products. Like it's good sometimes for people to have, especially people with complex financial needs. Maybe they have a need for this that fits all of the categories. But these products are really hard to describe. They've got a guaranteed rate. They've got a surrender rate. They've got a lot of pieces that go into them that make it hard. Uh, as a planner to be able to share with them, over the course of a meeting so that they understand really what they have. Some people put money into annuities and then they don't ever plan to touch them until the day they die. Like until they die, it becomes an inheritance piece. And it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You didn't align your goals with your retirement vehicle very well. Um, the early retirement thing is always interesting too, right? Like the DOS household. Maybe they don't necessarily have that desire, but I see it a lot in people who are young. They and really genuinely think age 55 is what they want. It's like, well, you have to be exceptional, because most people can't do that. Probably most people shouldn't try to either. Um, we see also a lot of the it's not just a dichotomous decision. It's not retirement or not. There is this beautiful option a lot of people have nowadays to phase out of retirement and to slowly work themselves out of the workplace. Um, if you're self-employed, that can really flow naturally, potentially. But there's a lot of really healthy choices there, and I've seen that working more than cold turkey for a lot of people. That option of like, let's go to 2 days a week, and that will mean that your assets can continue to grow. You really won't need to touch your retirement assets. You'll let that income, maybe a pension or social security flow in. And between all that, you can really make things work. So I've really just kind of picked and, chose, the inherited IRA rules are really messy right now. So there's a 10-year drawdown. It used to be you could stretch out an inherited IRA throughout your entire lifespan. And it's called the stretch IRA, and it was actually a planning tool. They've taken that out really because of the it almost became too tax advantaged, especially if you had large Roth accounts, and you could do some generation skipping, give it to your grandkids. Your grandkid inherits $100,000 Roth IRA with like RMD of 0.9%. Right. So like the account grows. And so you can imagine a 10-year-old getting that much money at that point. Not only are they getting what in year one, $900 that they can spend, sorry, $9,000 or whatever it be, but like, no, 900, but the account grows forever. It's just awesome, right? Maybe not in the Roth account for the tax man. But yeah, they've shut that down. So now you have 10 years to get your money out. But the question is, do you have to take RMDs every year, or can you wait until year 10 to pull out all of your money out of your inherited or beneficiary IRA? And that question was raised when they made these rules in 2019, and they've been delaying giving us a really good final answer since then. Can you believe it? And so we've got clients with these kind of accounts, and every November we get to this point and we're still scratching our heads because some of them would take RMDs anyway, but most of them say I'd just rather delay. And so we've just been delaying. And this year I think we're going to be able to delay again. So you would think something would be clear in that world, but that's not always the case. All right, y'all. Is there anything else that you guys have questions on that'll help us as we get through things? I promised I'd try to keep it short for you after a long week last week, so do my best to be true to my word. All righty. All right, guys, I appreciate you. Have a good week.